I'm 15 years old, a totally average kid, or young man as my dad calls me. Me and Dad are close. I mean, he's close with my sister too, but he's not real good at girl stuff. I guess that's why our time together seems easier for him. Compared to when he's with my sister. I try to pick up his slack by making time for her when he can't. Since Mom died, I think she feels alone. Mom was the best. She loved her family. She always knew when to talk and when to listen. Our whole family revolved around her. It's like her love made you feel special, so you wanted to be near her. I know, cheesy, but true. We all took it very hard when she passed. October will make a year she has been gone. For the most part, it's just been day by day. We always try to do silly little things to keep her memory alive. Things like antique shows and garage sales, two of Mom's favorites. Before she died, it was like pulling teeth to get me, Sis, or Dad to go with her. She rarely bought anything. I think she just enjoyed the time with her family. I always thought, who would want this old crap? To her and Dad, maybe it was a walk down memory lane. Table after table, mounded with memories of simpler times. Now that she's gone, we still frequent the sales. Only now, when Dad says, who wants to go look at other people's garbage? We all race to the car like small children going for ice cream. Some people visit their loved one's grave. We visit antique shows selling useless crap. All for the love of Mom. So now that you have a pretty good picture of my life, we'll go back to mid-May. It was a Saturday. I was chilling in my room, about to beat my top score on Monster Hunter. Sunbreak to any fellow gamers. I noticed Dad was a little quiet during breakfast. I sensed he may have been missing Mom. I didn't say anything until he came in my room, sat down, and asked if he could play. Something about Dad? He doesn't play video games. He doesn't like video games, but I know when he's missing Mom. I walked my character up to Rethilos and accepted my fate. With a fiery blast from his mouth, my hunter was instantly engulfed in flames. My health dropped to 0, and it was game over. Dad looked confused. He told me I'm not sure, but I think you might be dead, son. Yeah, little bit, I told him. My heart sunk in my chest. I was so close. But for Dad, I'll sacrifice the quest and my best score. Quickly, I sat up and said, this is dumb anyway. What say we go look at some garbage? That other people think is gold. A big smile came to his face. I'd like that, he told me. He said my sister is at her girlfriend's house. Should we wait for her? I shook my head no. Her loss, I said. We might find that big blue diamond from the Titanic. It'll be a bargain for $4. We laughed. Before long, we were neck deep in smelly antiques and corn dogs and roasted almonds. We tromped up and down the rows of tables. Suddenly, Dad stopped in mid-sentence. He stood like a statue, staring at a table full of dolls. Without asking, I walked past him straight to the table. Behind the table sat a tall, thin man. Immediately, he smiled. It scared the crap out of me. His smile was just like the Joker from Batman. With his ear-to-ear smile, he asked what he could do for me. Tell me about these dolls, I responded. He smiled that creepy-ass grin and began his sales pitch. Did I mention he had a piercing stare that also creeped the hell out of me? It was like he was looking directly into my soul, and he liked what he was looking at. Still, I pretended to be interested. I figured it would make a funny story for my sister. Dad pushed me aside and picked up a large doll on the center of the table. Great choice, my new creepy friend commented. Then he began to tell some fake story about this doll being from Berlin during the German War. He said some German doll maker was killed because of this doll. Hitler's mistress collected porcelain dolls. The doll was a prototype, only one in existence. It was the centerpiece of her collection. She worried the doll maker would make another one. She insisted hers must be the only one. Hitler ordered the execution of the doll maker. Shortly after, bombers destroyed the building with her and all her belongings. Only a handful of items were salvaged. This doll was one of them. I'll give you a couple of minutes to wrap your head around that, like I had to. Old Creepy could sure make up a story. I nudged Dad and said, "What do you think, big guy? You buying this crap?" "I think we should hold out for that diamond from the Titanic." Dad never broke his stare from the doll. "It's all true," he said. "Your mother has searched for this doll since she was a kid. Her name is Gretchen." Creepy quickly agreed. I think Dad could have said her name was Oprah, and Creepy would have went with it to get the sale. Then he got real serious and said he had to warn us. A curse follows this doll. He said, "We don't get to choose Gretchen. Gretchen must choose us." 3 vendors tried to own her before him. All 3 had catastrophic events in their lives. One lost all his belongings to a fire. One became paralyzed during the night. The last one died. His eyes never changed, but the creepy smile faded as he said that Gretchen chose him, so everything has been fine. He put his hand on the doll and said in an unsettling tone, "Gretchen must choose you." Then he said to walk away. "If she's still here at the end of the day, then she's chosen you." I laughed. "How much do you want for Gretchen the voodoo doll?" He leaned in and said, "We'd talk about that at the end of the day." Dad remained quiet. Without so much as a thank you, he turned and started walking toward another table. "Is it just me, or was that guy really weird?" I said. Never looking at me, Dad said, "Yeah, a little weird." For the next 2 hours, we rummaged through the tables. After a while, Dad cheered up and began to joke around like we always do. The show was over at 5, and Dad said it was time to go. I wondered if he would go back for Gretchen. I certainly wasn't going to suggest it. Dad stopped and turned toward the doll vendor's table. He looked unsure. Then he shook it off and said we should go. We loaded into the truck and started to drive toward the exit. A loud bang from the passenger side window brought us to a halt. Next to the truck was the creepy doll guy. With one hand he was slapping the window. In the other hand was Gretchen. With that creepy stare and that unnerving smile, he told us we couldn't leave. "We've been chosen," he said. I rolled down the window. He continued, "You have to take her. She chose you." Then he handed the doll to me through the open window. He had it cradled like a father holding his newborn, then handed it to me the same way. With one hand I went to grab it by its head. "No," he yelled. "Hold her like me. She is very delicate, like you would a newborn baby." "Okay," I responded. With both hands I cautiously cradled the doll. Dad asked what he owed him. He bowed his head and said thank you. "She has chosen you and released me." Then he turned and began to quickly walk away. I yelled one more time, "What do we owe you?" He looked back with a quick glance, then broke into a full run in the opposite direction of us. I looked at Dad and asked if he had ever seen anything like that before. He assured me he had not. Then he said maybe the guy was on drugs. That would explain his peculiar disposition. We both laughed. I looked out the window again, and that's when I realized I was still holding this doll cradled in my arms, like it was my newborn child. I shook my head in disbelief, grabbed the doll by its face, and threw it into the back seat. Careful, Dad said. You don't want her to regret choosing us. Yeah, we don't want that, I said. We both started laughing. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the whole truck was thrown sideways with a horrific crash. Glass exploded throughout the inside of the truck. Out of reflex, I closed my eyes until the truck came to a stop. When I opened them, there was a large piece of steel protruding through the window opening. As I turned my head to check Dad, I felt it just starting to cut into my neck. I froze perfectly still, looking straight forward. Are you okay? I asked. I could hear Dad moaning as he shifted positions. Holy crap, son, are you okay? He said. Yeah, I'm good. Give me a minute. I carefully reached my hand down to the power seat button. With a deep breath, I pushed it backward. Immediately, the seat moved back. I was free from the knife-like piece of steel that gave me a 3-inch scar on my neck, not to mention the psychological one that I still carry to this day. First responders surrounded the car. I told them we were both okay, but what the hell happened? One of them said we were T-boned by a runaway semi-truck. I turned my head toward the right. The entire side of the truck had been crushed. 4 inches from my ear was a massive steel grill with the word Mac at the top of it. On impact, one of the steel fins distorted and became the giant knife blade that almost ended me. Let's just say it destroyed car rides for me, and I avoid them whenever possible. Luckily, Dad and I were both fine. Responders helped Dad from the wreckage as I waited my turn. That's when I looked in the back seat. Gretchen was sitting upright in the middle of the back seat. Her head was slightly turned so she was looking right at me. To go from laying flat to sitting upright with her head turned toward me, well, let's just say it disturbed me a little. Within a couple minutes, Dad and I were both being checked out by paramedics. Apparently, the driver of the semi-truck had fallen asleep, causing the accident. He was unharmed as well. While Dad and I were recalling our near-death experience, a female police officer walked up. Her arms were positioned like she was holding a baby. When she got closer, she asked if I had a sister. I nodded yes. A smile came over her face. She said she thought so. What a lucky little girl to have such a beautiful doll. Then she leaned in and whispered in my ear that I should be more careful. This lovely little doll will be treated nicely. She very carefully handed Gretchen to me. When I reached with one hand, she pulled back aggressively. No, she said in a commanding voice, both hands, like you would for a baby. I extended both hands and Gretchen was handed off, like a newborn baby in the hospital. I questioned if that truck hit us harder than I thought. I looked over at Dad. He had the same look of disbelief as me. Nope, it was real. The officer brushed Gretchen's hair to one side with her fingers. Then she let out a giggle that sounded like it came from a 5-year-old girl. I said, thanks, I think. The officer turned and began to walk away. I heard the giggle again. When I looked up, she was skipping toward her police car, again like a child on the playground without a care in the world. Dad called my uncle to come pick us up. He was there in a matter of minutes. I've always liked my Uncle Joe. We screw around all the time. His first response was, "Are you guys okay?" We both said, "Yeah." Then he looked at me and said, "Nice dolly. Did Daddy buy you that?" That's when I realized I was still holding it like I was its mother. I struggled for a response. "Shut up," I said. It was weak, but it was all I could come up with. He laughed and said, "Come on, bro, let me take you and my niece home. I don't have a car seat, is that okay?" Then Dad told him to lighten up. He almost died. Uncle smiled and put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "Come on, let's get you guys home." With a brief sweep, he took Gretchen from my hands. Like earlier, he opened the rear door and tossed her in the back seat. I got in the opposite side. I sat in the back seat staring at Gretchen, lying face down on the seat. Suddenly, I just caved. I picked her up, fixed her hair, sat her upright, and buckled her in. Dad heard the click of the seatbelt. He turned and thanked me. "That was bothering me too," he said. He smiled, turned toward my uncle, and asked how work was going. I could see Uncle's look in the rear view mirror. He looked confused. "Sure you don't want to go to the hospital?" Dad said, "We're good." "And how's work?" The rest of the ride was filled with small talk. Before long, Uncle was gone, and it was just me and Dad. Oh, and Gretchen. We were both unsure how to feel about all the strange events that seemed to happen once Gretchen became ours. Or we became hers. However you want to look at it, either way, we couldn't make sense of it. When my sister got home, we told her about the accident. Only the accident. There was no mention of Gretchen. Dad thought it would be better if she didn't know. He said we needed some time to figure out what to do. He made Gretchen my responsibility. A responsibility I don't take lightly. She stays in my room. I found a large box. It took an entire Saturday to convert it into a home for her, or like a large dollhouse, some might say. There's a couch, a kitchen, a table and chairs, windows with curtains. I even drew pictures of our family, her included, framed them and hung it on a wall in her new house. She spends the day in her dollhouse while I'm at school. Nighttime, she sleeps in my bed. I always tell her she's pretty and brush her hair. I can only hope she's happy. It terrifies me to think what might happen if she's not. Thinking about it, I guess Gretchen did well, choosing